Now we move on to the Ottoman Empire. In the 16th and 17th century, conflict with Europe in the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and the Black Sea is very common for the Ottoman Empire. They are feared greatly. They have a very powerful army. The guy pictured to the right is Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century. He's got more cannons than all of Europe combined. 18th century, Ottoman authority is gradually receded, making it a target. Its territory has stretched in history from Iraq to Arabia, across North Africa, and into Southeast Europe. It is the largest and most stable government after the Roman collapse, starting in the 11th century. It will have conquered Constantinople in 1453, ending the Byzantine Empire, and it will continue to exist until World War I. Religious toleration in the Ottoman government. The dominant empire of the Islamic world is the Ottoman Empire. It has 3 holy cities. If you look at the map, I put big stars on them: Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. It has a large population, diverse ethnically, linguistically, and religiously. Has Orthodox and Catholic Christians as well as Jews in its empire, and it is more religiously tolerant than Europe is during its time. It governs these people through millets, these other peoples through millets. These are officially recognized religious communities. These peoples, Dhimmis, people of the book who are not Muslim, but they are of recognized and accepted religions, or tolerated religions, could practice their religion and manage their millets, but they were second-class citizens. They had to pay the head tax for not being Muslim, the jizyah, and they could not serve in the military. They had to wear special colors identifying that they were not Muslim. But they were economically successful. They had skills that oftentimes Muslims refused to learn because it seemed demeaning. The sultans recruited military and administrative leaders who were not from powerful noble families. The devshirm were recruited Christian boys who converted. They were placed in the infantry, and they became what were called janissaries, kind of specialized, powerful infantry who used guns. Many slaves, besides the janissaries, worked in government and had great power. And the nobility had little influence in the empire. Their influence was only in their regional areas. So this is how the sultans tried to keep the nobility from being too powerful. And this picture shows the devshirm. Those kids are at the bottom. They're being recruited. They probably don't feel recruited. They feel more like condemned, probably. And now we talk about the role of the Ulama. The Ulama is a religious scholar, Islamic religious authorities who were active in politics, law, and administration. They dominated religious institutions, schools, and courts. And by the late 17th century, the Ulama and the Janissary urged the Sultan to maintain tradition rather than modernize like Europe. So as we're learning, Europe is modernizing, improving, and here we have these powerful factions within the Ottoman Empire who don't want the Ottoman Empire to do the same thing, which basically means that because of their influence, the Ottoman Empire is going to lose the race and eventually cease to exist. The end of the Ottoman Empire. In the 15th century onward, they will have pushed westward, but in the 1577, the Battle of Lepanto will mean that they will cease to be too much of a naval threat outside of the Eastern Mediterranean. They'll still dominate in the Eastern Mediterranean for a while longer. In 1683, they will penetrate so far as to Vienna, Austria. They will besiege Vienna, as pictured in this painting below, but they will be decisively defeated, and then from the 17th century onward, you're going to have a situation where here you have this empire that is kind of on the decline, and the Grand Vizier, which is kind of like the chief minister or prime minister, their influence will grow. And oftentimes they're not even Turkish. Their loyalty is sometimes suspect, and corruption is kind of more of a problem than it had been before. So the government will be weakening over time. There will be infighting in the army and the nobility. Here we see a map showing the Ottoman Empire in 1481 with acquisitions up to 1520, then under Suleiman II and up to 1683. But so even though they're going through all this stuff of infighting and corruption, they're still powerful and a massive empire. But as this corruption increases, local authorities will begin to assert themselves. And as local authorities, the nobility, become more powerful, that means the central authority of the Sultan will weaken, and that's not going to be good for the sustainability of the empire. External factors in the decline of the Ottoman Empire. They've long led Europe in knowledge, in technology, economic skill and organization, and this is going to end sometime in the 15th, 16th century as Europeans, I don't know why I put English, but Europeans advance. The new Atlantic trade will bypass the Ottoman Empire, and literally, before the Atlantic trade, before the Portuguese get around Africa, and before the Spanish get to Central and South America and then North America, trade passed through the Mediterranean Sea or overland, and either way it had to pass through the Ottoman Empire. So now the Europeans are finding a way to bypass them and get to India and China directly, and suddenly they're no longer the middlemen, they're no longer profiting from the trade going on between Europe and Asia. So this is going to be a problem for them. They're going to lose money as a result. Europeans are developing more powerful weapons, more powerful cannons, better designed rifles and muskets. In the 1690s, a League of European powers will defeat the Ottomans. In 1699, they'll sign the Treaty of Karlowitz, which will give up some territory, including Hungary, to the Habsburgs. And up at the top, you see the Treaty of Karlowitz, the signing of it. And if you look, the folks to the left are the Ottomans. They're got their legs folded underneath as they sit there. And then they're going to have Russian conflict. So they've signed the Treaty of Karlowitz. They've lost territory to the Habsburgs. And then the Russians are going to try to pick at them at the Black Sea. And the Russians will slowly get more and more control over the Black Sea. So the Ottomans will continue to view themselves as superior even though they're losing territory and on the decline. They're going to ignore European developments. In the 18th century, they're finally going to begin to recognize that Europe is really posing a significant threat, and they're going to borrow some European technology. They're going to bring in some foreign advisors, kind of like the Russians do in that respect, but they are not Christian, for one thing. The Ulama, the religious scholars, will resist European imitation of European ways. And examples, they got the Sultan to close a school of technology that was open to imitate European technology, and also a printing press that was opened. They got him to get rid of the printing press. Europeans will, as they see this decline with the Ottomans, and they see that the Ottomans refuse basically to try to keep up with what Europe is doing, will become contemptuous of the Ottoman Empire, whereas a few hundred years before they were incredibly scared of the Ottoman Empire. Now they're contemptuous. The Ottoman Empire will be viewed as declining, and since the Ottoman Empire is the champion of Islam, Islam will be viewed as a backward-looking religion. So in perspective, in the second quarter of the 18th century in Europe, monarchies will have gained a great deal of strength. And this is a time period when individual monarchs and noble families could create big changes. But the nobility will have been restrained by the monarchs, except in Britain. That's the reason I'm showing you Louis XIV again. If there's anybody who kind of is a striking example of the power of the monarchy, even though he dies, I believe it was 1705 or 1715, very early in the 18th century, still he kind of represents this absolute monarchy, this power of the monarchy. And so I want you thinking about these powerful monarchs in Europe during this time period, and how they had the way they did it is they had to create an effective bureaucratic type of government with departments, and they had to weaken the nobility, and they had to gain control of religion in one way or another. So these new militaries and this new emphasis on diplomacy that these bureaucratic monarchies are going to have is going to lead to new rivalries. The French and the British will fight for trade and control of overseas colonies and overseas empire. In the 17th century, there was a rivalry about French dominance in Europe between the French and the British, but now it's going to be about colonies. The rivalry on the continent will be between Prussia and Austria as France recedes a little bit in that respect. Prussia and Austria will be fighting over who has control basically of Germany, and therefore who has kind of the pivot power to kind of influence the rest of Europe. And we'll be looking at social and intellectual changes in the 18th century, which interestingly enough will eventually challenge the authority of the monarchy in a new way, in a very modern way. Thank you.